The image of Sonny Corleone's bullet-riddled car in The Godfather, 1972, is etched into cinema history, a symbol of power, betrayal, and tragedy. But behind these legendary roles, many of the actors who brought them to life have left us forever, often in ways more heartbreaking than the stories they told on screen. In this video, we honor 38 stars of The Godfather who have passed away, celebrating their legacy and the unforgettable impact they left on film history. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's say goodbye. Marlon Brando as Vito Corleone. Marlon Brando was born on April 3, 1924, in Omaha, Nebraska. When he was 48 years old, he stepped into cinematic immortality as Don Vito Corleone in The Godfather, 1972. With his raspy voice and solemn gaze, Brando embodied the aging mafia patriarch with haunting authority, earning him his second Academy Award. But behind the camera, Brando's life was tumultuous. He endured 3 stormy marriages, all ending in heartbreak. His first wife, Anna Kashfi, left after less than 2 years. His second marriage to Movita Castaneda was voided due to her not being legally divorced. His third, to Tahitian actress Tarita Teripaya, collapsed under scandals and irreconcilable conflict. His greatest personal tragedy was his children. In 1990, his son Christian Brando fatally shot his sister Cheyenne's boyfriend at Brando's home. 6 years later, Cheyenne died by suicide at 25 after battling depression and addiction. Brando once bitterly confessed, "I was a terrible father." Consumed by guilt and grief, he became reclusive, obese, and addicted to alcohol. Marlon Brando died on July 1, 2004, at UCLA Medical Center, aged 80. The cause was respiratory failure from pulmonary fibrosis and congestive heart failure. He also suffered from diabetes and liver cancer. His ashes were scattered in Tahiti, his last paradise, and Death Valley, alongside those of his closest friend, Wally Cox, James Caan as Sonny Corleone. James Edmund Caan was born on March 26, 1940, in the Bronx, New York. When he was 32, he took on the role of Sonny Corleone, the hot-headed eldest son of the Corleone family. The part earned him an Oscar nomination and permanently cemented his place in cinematic legend. Caan married 4 times and each ended in divorce. His second wife, Sheila Ryan, was with him for less than a year. He had 5 children, including actor Scott Caan, though their relationship was often strained. James later admitted he regretted not being present enough in his children's lives. The 1980s were his darkest chapter. After losing his beloved sister to leukemia, Caan spiraled into depression, drug abuse, and disappeared from film for 5 years. He even considered quitting acting altogether. What saved him? Seeing his dog emaciated because he couldn't afford food. That moment pushed him to fight back. Outside film, Caan was a 6th-degree black belt in karate, a rodeo competitor, and known for his wild lifestyle. He once admitted to FBI suspicion over alleged mafia ties and was even accused of hiring someone to rough up Joe Pesci over an unpaid hotel bill. Even late in life, he never stopped working. From Elf, 2003, to Get Smart, 2008, Queen Bees, 2021, and his final role in Fast Charlie, 2023, with Pierce Brosnan, he kept going. He begged Francis Ford Coppola for a cameo in Megalopolis, calling it his swan song. James Caan died on July 6, 2022, in Los Angeles, aged 82, from a heart attack caused by coronary artery disease. He also had COPD and congestive heart failure. He was buried at Eden Memorial Park Cemetery, resting among Jewish Hollywood greats. John Cazale as Fredo Corleone. John Holland Cazale was born on August 12, 1935, in Massachusetts. When he was 37, he portrayed Fredo Corleone in The Godfather, the weak, confused, and ultimately betrayed brother. Fredo's vulnerability stirred anger and deep sympathy, mirroring the quiet sorrow in Cazale's own life. In just 6 years, Cazale acted in only 5 films, but each was nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. From The Conversation to Dog Day Afternoon, The Godfather Part 2 to The Deer Hunter, his performances were filled with haunting emotional depth. Director Sidney Lumet said, "Cazale had an infinite sadness. It showed in every frame. Then came devastating news: terminal lung cancer." In 1977, Cazale insisted on completing The Deer Hunter despite warnings from doctors. Robert De Niro even paid out of pocket to ensure the production would keep Cazale on board, knowing no one else could play the role. His partner, Meryl Streep, remained by his side every moment, fighting to hold on to him just a little longer. John Cazale died on March 13, 1978, in New York at age 42. He was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Malden, Massachusetts. The Deer Hunter had yet to be released, but to friends like Al Pacino, Cazale was, and always would be, one of the greatest actors of our time. Al Lettieri, as Virgil Sollozzo. Alfredo Lettieri was born on February 24, 1928, and when he was 44, he delivered one of the most chilling performances in The Godfather, 1972, as Virgil the Turk Sollozzo, the cold, calculating heroin trafficker who dares to challenge Vito Corleone. Lettieri brought to life a character so menacing that even the Don himself tread carefully. What made the performance unforgettable was that Lettieri wasn't far removed from the role. Fluent in Italian and reportedly related by blood to real-life Genovese crime boss Thomas Eboli, Lettieri lived and breathed the world he portrayed. Al Pacino later revealed in a 2024 memoir that Lettieri had once taken him to meet real mobsters to help him better understand the role of Michael Corleone. Before The Godfather, Lettieri played gritty villains opposite icons like Marlon Brando, The Night of the Following Day, Steve McQueen, The Getaway, and Charles Bronson, Mr. Majestic. He even wrote the adaptation for the gangster film Villain, 1971. Whether as a brute or a seducer, Lettieri never seemed to be acting, he was simply channeling his truth. But behind the screen was a man consumed by vice. He lived like a gangster, addicted to alcohol and cigarettes, partying hard and stumbling through 2 failed marriages. Friends said he looked perpetually exhausted, like he knew his time was short. On October 18, 1975, just 3 years after The Godfather propelled him into international recognition, Al Lettieri died of a heart attack in New York City at the age of 47. Richard S. Castellano as Peter Clemenza. Richard Salvatore Castellano was born on September 4, 1933, in Queens, New York, to Sicilian immigrants. When he was 39, he portrayed Peter Clemenza in The Godfather, 1972, the loyal and clever capo regime known for delivering the iconic improvised line, "Leave the gun, take the cannoli." Already an Oscar nominee for Lovers and Other Strangers, 1970. Castellano was a familiar face on both TV and film, starring in The Super, 1972, and Joe and Sons, 1975 to 1976. He often played gruff but lovable Italian fathers, mixing toughness with charm. However, he didn't return for The Godfather Part 2, reportedly due to a dispute with director Francis Ford Coppola over creative control of his dialogue. His absence arguably marked the beginning of a gradual fade from the spotlight. Castellano also struggled with poor health and personal pressures. He dealt with heart problems and the stress of the industry, which took a toll on his relationships. He was married twice. One marriage ended in divorce, the other lasted, but became strained as his health deteriorated. On December 10, 1988, Richard Castellano died suddenly of a heart attack at his home in North Bergen, New Jersey, at the age of 55. His early death left Hollywood mourning a talent that never got to fully shine. Sterling Hayden as Captain McCluskey. Sterling Hayden was born on March 26, 1916, in Upper Montclair, New Jersey. When he was 56, he played the corrupt and brutal Captain McCluskey in The Godfather, a role that lasted mere minutes but made a lasting impression thanks to his imposing stature and tortured eyes. Standing at 6 feet 5 inches, Hayden was once called the most beautiful man in movies in the 1940s. Yet he loathed Hollywood fame, seeing it only as a means to fund his true passion, sailing. He crossed oceans, vanished from sets, and lived for the sea. That pursuit of freedom came at a personal cost. He endured 2 failed marriages, to actress Madeleine Carroll and later to Betty DeNoon, and became estranged from his children. Plagued by alcoholism and guilt, he often expressed self-loathing for selling out to Hollywood. "I never wanted to be an actor," he once said. "I just wanted a boat and to get away." Despite his aversion, Hayden delivered unforgettable performances in noir classics like The Asphalt Jungle and The Killing, and returned triumphantly in Dr. Strangelove as the unhinged General Jack D. Ripper. His role in The Godfather was brief, but symbolic of his inner conflicts. Sterling Hayden died of prostate cancer on May 23, 1986 in Sausalito, California, at age 70. A sailor, actor, rebel, and soul torn between duty and dream, he remains one of cinema's most fascinating enigmas. Richard Conte as Don Emilio Barzini. Richard Conte, born Nicholas Peter Conte, came into the world on March 24, 1910, in Jersey City, New Jersey. When he was 62, he appeared in The Godfather as Don Emilio Barzini, a rival boss with a deadly poker face, quietly orchestrating the film's bloodiest betrayals. In real life, Conte shared his character's ambition and grit. He once worked as a truck driver, singing waiter and shoe salesman to survive. While working at a Connecticut resort, he was discovered by Elia Cazale, an encounter that changed his life. During the 1940s and 50s, Conte rose to prominence in crime dramas and film noir, starring in Cry of the City, Whirlpool, and The Big Combo. With his sharp features and commanding voice, he became the archetype of the suave yet lethal villain. Conte's personal life, however, was riddled with hardship. He married twice. His first to actress Ruth Story ended in divorce, while his second to Shirley Garner lasted until his death, but was strained by health problems and money worries. His son, Mark Conte, became a film editor, and his grandson, Chris Conte, played in the NFL. On April 3, 1975, Conte suffered a massive heart attack and stroke. After fighting for 8 hours in intensive care at UCLA Medical Center, he died on April 15th, aged 65. He was laid to rest at Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles, among Hollywood royalty, where he rightfully belonged. John Marley as Jack Woltz. John Marley was born as Mortimer Leon Marley on October 17, 1907, in Harlem, New York City. When he was 65 years old when he took on the role of Jack Woltz in The Godfather, 1972. In a brief but unforgettable performance, he portrayed the arrogant Hollywood producer whose defiance leads to one of cinema's most iconic scenes, the discovery of his prized horse's severed head in bed. Marley's raw, horrified scream became an enduring image in 20th century film history. Over a career spanning 45 years, Marley appeared in nearly 250 films and television series. He won the Volpe Cup at the Venice Film Festival in 1968 for John Cassavetes' Faces, and earned both an Oscar and Golden Globe nomination for his touching role in Love Story, 1970. But it was The Godfather that etched him permanently into pop culture, even with limited screen time. Despite his prolific resume, Marley never achieved full A-list status. That obscurity sometimes frustrated him. He was married twice and had 3 children, but his later years were marked by isolation and declining health. His second marriage to Beverly suffered under the weight of his reclusiveness and heart disease. In 1984, at age 76, John Marley died following open-heart surgery. He was quietly buried at Cedar Park Cemetery in Emerson, New Jersey, fittingly understated for a man who once screamed his way into cinematic legend. Abe Vigoda as Salvatore Tessio. Abe Vigoda was born on February 24, 1921, in Brooklyn, New York, to Russian Jewish immigrants. When he was 51 years old, he portrayed Salvatore Tessio in The Godfather, 1972, the once loyal capo regime who ultimately betrays the Corleone family. Though his role was confined to the first film, Tessio became a symbol of quiet treachery, and Vigoda delivered the performance with eerie stillness and resignation. Off-screen, Vigoda became almost as famous for not dying as for his acting. In 1982, People magazine mistakenly reported his death, prompting him to pose in a coffin holding the article to prove he was alive. The gag snowballed into decades of running jokes across TV and the internet, with Vigoda himself often leaning into the morbid humor. He married twice but found little lasting happiness in either relationship. After the death of his second wife in 1992, he lived a reclusive life, candidly acknowledging his frustration at being typecast in supporting roles that limited his artistic growth. Still, Vigoda's quiet intensity turned that limitation into his legacy. His line, "Can you get me off the hook, Tom?" for old time's sake, is among the most quoted in mafia movie history. He died on January 26, 2016, at the age of 94, at his daughter's home in New Jersey, no longer the punchline of a death rumor, but the closing act of a long and storied life. Al Martino as Johnny Fontaine. Al Martino was born Jasper Cini on October 7, 1927 in Philadelphia. He brought The Godfather's crooner Johnny Fontaine to life when he was 45 years old. The character, begging Don Corleone to save his failing career, mirrored Martino's own story of mafia entanglement, career derailment, and quiet desperation behind the spotlight. In the early 1950s, Martino rose to fame with the hit Here in My Heart, the first ever UK #1 single. But fame came with danger. The mafia allegedly bought his contract and extorted him for $75,000. Fearing for his life, he fled to England, where he lived in exile while his American career crumbled. The role of Johnny Fontaine initially went to Vic Damone, but Martino, allegedly with help from crime boss Russell Bufalino, pressured the studio with negative press. Damone, fearful of retaliation, dropped out, and Martino reclaimed the part. In essence, he became Johnny Fontaine by living it. Martino was married 3 times, with the first 2 ending in divorce. He battled alcoholism and financial issues in later life, but remained beloved for his warm baritone voice and presence in reruns of The Godfather. He died of heart failure on October 13, 2009, just 6 days after his 82nd birthday, at home in Springfield, Pennsylvania. He was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in California, his story ending much like his most famous role, with echoes of music, loyalty, and quiet regret. Morgana King as Carmela Corleone. Maria Grazia Morgana Messina, known professionally as Morgana King, was born on June 4, 1930, in Pleasantville, New York. When she was 42, she portrayed the serene matriarch Carmela Corleone in The Godfather, 1972, a quiet presence, yet the emotional anchor of the Corleone dynasty. Though soft-spoken on-screen, King had a voice that once filled concert halls. A jazz vocalist with a rare contralto range that spanned 4 octaves, she was a Grammy nominee and released over 30 albums. While critics praised her artistry, the spotlight of mainstream stardom often eluded her, and she longed to be seen not just as a singer, but as a complete stage performer. King married twice, both times to accomplished jazz musicians. Her first marriage to trumpeter Tony Fusella ended in divorce. Her second husband, trombonist Willie Dennis, died in a car crash just 4 years into their marriage. She later lost her only daughter, Grayson, in 2008, a grief that deeply shadowed her final years. Morgana King died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in Palm Springs, California, on March 22, 2018, at the age of 87. There were no elaborate memorials, no industry fanfare, only the quiet departure of a woman who brought dignity, depth, and melancholy to one of film's most revered families. Richard Bright as Al Neri. Richard James Bright was born on June 28, 1937, in Brooklyn, New York. When he was 35 years old, he took on the role of Al Neri in The Godfather, 1972, the cold, quiet, and unflinchingly loyal bodyguard of Michael Corleone. Though reserved in dialogue, Neri was the silent hand of death throughout the trilogy, a presence felt in every calculated act of violence. Bright was one of only 5 actors to appear in all 3 Godfather films. He was the man who executed Don Barzini during the Baptism Massacre, who quietly eliminated Fredo on Lake Tahoe, and who delivered swift justice to Archbishop Gilday in Part 3. Neri never spoke much, but when he acted, it was final. Off-screen, Bright's life was far less glamorous. He began acting at 18 in live TV, but spent decades fighting for recognition. In the 1960s, he faced multiple arrests over his role in The Beard, a controversial play deemed obscene. Though he won in court under First Amendment protections, the label of troublemaker stuck. His marriage to actress Rutanya Alda endured many strains, largely due to his constant absence, involvement in independent cinema, experimental theater, and even interactive media like Ripper. His bond with his children became strained over time. By his later years, Bright was often seen using an oxygen tank due to emphysema, something he cleverly incorporated into his acting to mask his decline. Tragedy struck on February 18, 2006, when Bright was struck by the rear wheels of a tour bus while crossing a street in Manhattan. The driver never noticed. There were no criminal charges, only a suspended license. Bright died at age 68, leaving behind a legacy as the Godfather's most haunting shadow. Lenny Montana as Luca Brasi. Lenny Montana, born Leonardo Passafaro, was born on March 13, 1926 in Brooklyn, New York. He portrayed Luca Brasi in The Godfather, 1972, when he was 46 years old. A notorious hitman, fiercely, almost obsessively, loyal to Don Corleone. The role was brief but chilling, and Montana embodied it perfectly, not just because of his towering, nearly 2-meter frame, but because of his own violent past in real life. Before the lights of Hollywood, Montana was a professional wrestler who roamed the ring under the name Zebra Kid. Later, he became a feared enforcer for the Colombo crime family. He was arrested, worked as a bodyguard for mob bosses, and knew firsthand how to intimidate, burn, and kill, classic underworld tactics. When The Godfather was casting for Luca Brasi, Montana happened to be on set as an actual bodyguard and was cast on the spot. His visible nervousness around Marlon Brando was real, and director Francis Ford Coppola cleverly turned it into part of Brasi's unsettling persona, the trembling assassin nervously offering his congratulations to Don Corleone on his daughter's wedding day. Yet Hollywood couldn't fully rescue Montana from the shadow of his past. After the film, he took on a handful of supporting roles in action movies and television, but never escaped the muscle-for-hire typecast. In his later years, he lived in fear of revenge from old debts in the criminal underworld. With failed marriages and mounting financial troubles, he spiraled into alcohol and lived increasingly isolated. Once a terrifying symbol of real and cinematic crime, he became a weary, fading figure. On May 12, 1992, Lenny Montana died of a heart attack at his home in Lindenhurst, New York. He was 66, a man who once terrified both audiences and rivals left the world in silence. Alex Rocco as Mo Green. Alex Rocco, born Alessandro Federico Petriconi Jr., was born on February 29, 1936, in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In 1972, he was 36 years old. He took on the role of Moe Greene, the Las Vegas casino mogul, in the cinematic masterpiece, The Godfather. His character, the founder of the Vegas gambling empire, is famously and coldly eliminated by Michael Corleone. This role marked a turning point in Rocco's career and sent his life down a path filled with strange twists and haunting echoes. Before the glamour of Hollywood, Rocco had been a real-life gangster. Under his original name, Alexander Petriconi, he was an associate of Boston's notorious Winter Hill Gang. He had been arrested for assault, vandalism, and even suspected in a gangland murder related to the Irish mob wars of the 1960s. After serving time, his wife divorced him, and his car was bombed. He later admitted, "If I stayed, I was gonna die." Rocco fled Boston by flipping a coin, heads for Miami, tails for California, and fate sent him west to Hollywood. In California, he studied acting under Leonard Nimoy and adopted the name Alex Rocco. Though he worked to soften his thick Boston accent, his gangster aura remained intact. With his gravelly voice and icy stare, Rocco was soon cast in villainous roles, and Moe Greene became his defining performance. Rumor has it that after the film, he was threatened by real-life casino figures for borrowing too much from reality. Beyond The Godfather, Rocco appeared in Get Shorty, A Bug's Life, That Thing You Do, and won an Emmy for his role as the eccentric talent agent in the famous Teddy Z. Though his career soared, his personal life was far more turbulent. He endured several failed marriages, the loss of his wife to cancer, and the untimely death of his adopted son, Mark Rocco, a talented director, at the age of 46. These quiet heartbreaks caused him to retreat from the spotlight, and in his later years, he primarily focused on voice acting. Alex Rocco died of pancreatic cancer on July 18, 2015, at his home in Studio City at the age of 79. He is remembered as a man who truly lived two lives, first as Petriconi, the Boston gangster, and later as Rocco, the screen icon. And in both worlds, he remained a player no one could easily take down. Julie Gregg as Sandra Corleone. Julie Gregg, born Beverly Marie Scalzo, was born on January 24, 1937, in Niagara Falls, New York. In 1972, she was 35 years old. She portrayed Sandra Corleone, the gentle, soft-spoken wife of Sonny Corleone, in the cinematic masterpiece The Godfather. Though her screen time was brief, the role became forever tied to her name and etched into film legend. However, Julie Gregg's career and personal life held far more complexity than what appeared on screen. As the daughter of an Italian-American family, Julie discovered a passion for the arts early in life. A music scholarship brought her to California, where she began her journey as both an actress and a singer. She became a familiar face on American television throughout the 1960s to 1980s, appearing in major series like Mission, Impossible, Batman, Gunsmoke, Hawaii Five-0, and The Virginian. On stage, she earned a Tony Award nomination for her role in the musical The Happy Time and won the Theatre World Award, celebrated for her mesmerizing voice and elegant stage presence. Despite her remarkable talent, Julie Gregg faced hardships in her personal life. She went through 2 failed marriages, and the constant pressure of choosing between the spotlight and a stable home life left her in a state of lingering tension and regret. After years in the limelight, Julie gradually withdrew from the entertainment industry by the late 1980s. Her final television appearance was in 1987. Julie Gregg passed away from cancer on November 7, 2016, in Van Nuys, California, at the age of 79. There was no grand funeral, no media fanfare. She left the world quietly, just as she once appeared in The Godfather, gentle, resilient, and silently bearing her burdens. a gifted artist whose life unfolded through triumphs and sorrows mostly left untold. The Godfather is more than a film. It is a legacy that continues to echo through time. Yet the real-life stories behind the actors carry their own powerful tragedies and triumphs. Which Godfather character left the strongest impression on you? And how do you feel now knowing the fates of the actors who brought them to life? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe to keep discovering the hidden stories of cinema's unforgettable legends.